Lila Washington sat on a stiff leather chair in the waiting room of the Sterling mansion, her worn purse clutched tightly in her lap. With its high ceilings and polished mahogany paneling, the room felt more like a museum than a home. A grandfather clock ticked loudly in the corner, each second amplifying her anxiety. Her heart raced as she smoothed her simple black dress, reserved for interviews and funerals. This was her last chance. 4 families had already turned her down for caregiver positions, citing her lack of formal certifications or her insistence on bringing her 7-year-old daughter, Amara. But Lila couldn't afford to fail now. Amara's school fees were due next week, and the eviction notice taped to their apartment door gave them only 10 days to pay the overdue rent. Lila, a Black American woman in her early 30s, had always prided herself on her resilience. Growing up in Atlanta, she'd watched her grandmother, Mama Rose, nurse neighbors through ailments with a blend of medical knowledge and herbal remedies. Though rough from years of work, Mama Rose's hands had soothed fevers and mended broken spirits. "Healing starts with love and truth," she'd say, her voice warm as the Georgia sun. Lila had learned caregiving at her side, but she'd dismissed those old-world lessons as a teenager, chasing a nursing degree she never finished after her ex-partner left her pregnant and alone. With Mama Rose gone and bills piling up, those lessons were all she had left. The Sterling job was a lifeline. The ad had promised a live-in position caring for James Sterling, a white American millionaire left paraplegic after a car accident. The pay was enough to cover Amara's tuition and keep a roof over their heads. But the mansion's grandeur unnerved Lila. The air felt heavy, as if the walls held secrets they weren't ready to share. A row of empty picture hooks lined the hallway, their absence leaving faint rectangles on the silk wallpaper. Who removed the photos, and why? Lila pushed the thought aside, focusing on the task ahead. She needed this job, no matter what shadows lurked here. "Ms. Washington," a sharp voice called, breaking her reverie. Evelyn Carter, the mansion's stern-faced secretary, stood in the doorway, her gray suit as rigid as her posture. "Mr. Thomas Sterling will see you now." Lila rose, smoothing her dress again, and followed Evelyn down a corridor lined with marble busts and crystal sconces. Her worn sneakers squeaked faintly on the polished floor, contrasting with Evelyn's clicking heels. The secretary's cold glance made Lila feel small, but she squared her shoulders, channeling Mama Rose's strength. She was here for Amara, for their future. The office was vast, its walls covered in dark wood and leather-bound books. Thomas Sterling, James's older brother, sat behind a massive desk, his cold blue eyes fixed on a stack of papers. His tailored suit and sharp features screamed wealth, but his demeanor was ice. He didn't look up as Lila entered, his pen scratching across a document with deliberate precision. "Thomas stated you're applying for the caregiver position," his voice flat, not a question but a demand for confirmation. "Yes, sir," Lila replied, her tone steady despite the knot in her stomach. "I have 3 years' experience caring for patients with limited mobility. I worked with elderly clients and those recovering from surgeries." Thomas cut her off, finally glancing up, his gaze appraising her from head to toe. "Can you handle basic hygiene for a person with paraplegia? Bathing, changing, that sort of thing?" "Yes, sir," Lila said. "I've assisted with daily care for clients with similar needs. I'm trained in safe transfers and maintaining dignity and discretion," Thomas added, his eyes narrowing. "Whatever happens in this house stays here. Understood?" "Of course, sir." Lila nodded, though his intensity sent a chill down her spine. What required such secrecy? Thomas leaned back, his fingers steepled. "You're hired. Mrs. Clara Thompson, the housekeeper, will show you to your quarters. You start tomorrow. 6 a.m. Sharp. It's a live-in position. Lila's relief was immediate, but a hurdle remained. She took a deep breath. Thank you, sir. But I have a daughter, Amara. She's 7, very quiet, and well-behaved. Could she live here with me? Thomas's jaw tightened, his pen pausing mid-air. For a moment, Lila feared he'd retract the offer. Her mind raced to Amara, her bright eyes and infectious giggle, waiting at their neighbor's apartment with her favorite stuffed rabbit, Mr. Floppy. Without this job, they'd be on the street. Please, Lila added softly, her voice trembling but firm. She won't be any trouble. I can't leave her alone. Thomas's lips pressed into a thin line. He picked up his phone, his tone clipped. Clara, the new hire, has a child. Clear the small room next to the staff quarters. He hung up without waiting for a response, his eyes locking onto Lila's. One mistake, one complaint from my brother's fiancée, Vanessa Blake, and you're both out. Understood? Yes, sir, Lila said, her heart pounding with gratitude and unease. When can I meet Mr. James Sterling? Thomas's expression flickered, a shadow crossing his face. My brother isn't receiving visitors. You'll care for him, but don't expect conversation. The accident changed him. He's not himself. Evelyn reappeared before Lila could ask more, gesturing for her to follow. Mrs. Clara Thompson, an older woman with a lined face and kind but guarded eyes, met them in the hallway. Her gray hair was pulled into a neat bun, and her apron suggested years of quiet service. This way, Ms. Washington said, her voice softer than Evelyn's but firm. Lila's unease grew as they wound through the mansion's labyrinthine corridors. The house was stunning. Marble floors, gilded mirrors, chandeliers dripping with crystal, but it felt hollow, like a beautiful shell abandoned by its soul. The empty picture hooks haunted her, their absence screaming louder than any portrait could. What had happened to the Sterling family to drain this place of warmth? Clara stopped at a modest door. This is your room, she said, revealing a small but clean space with a single bed, a dresser, and a window overlooking the dark gardens. Your daughter can have the one next door. It's smaller, but it'll do. Bathrooms are shared with other staff. The kitchen's off limits except during mealtimes. Thank you, Lila said, her voice thick with relief. When should I bring our things? Tonight, Clara replied. Her stern expression softened slightly. And girl, watch yourself around Ms. Vanessa Blake. She doesn't take kindly to, well, watch yourself. Lila nodded, her mind spinning. As Clara left, she sank onto the bed, the day's weight pressing down. She thought of Amara, her bright smile a beacon in their darkest moments. This job was their salvation, but Thomas's cold eyes, the missing photos, and Clara's warning gnawed at her. What secrets did the Sterling mansion hold? Lila whispered a prayer, asking Mama Rose's spirit for strength. For Amara, she would face whatever lay ahead, but deep down, she couldn't shake the feeling that she'd just stepped into a storm she didn't yet understand. Lila Washington stood in the dim light of their cramped apartment, folding Amara's favorite sundress into a battered suitcase. The single bulb overhead flickered, casting shadows on the peeling wallpaper, a reminder of the life they were fighting to escape. Cardboard boxes lined the floor, filled with the essentials of their existence. A few clothes, Amara's dog-eared storybooks, and a small tin of keepsakes from better days. The eviction notice, still taped to the door, loomed like a guillotine, its red ink screaming urgency. But tonight, hope flickered in Lila's chest. The job at the Sterling mansion was a lifeline, a chance to keep Amara safe, fed, and in school. Yet, the memory of Thomas Sterling's cold eyes and the mansion's sterile halls gnawed at her, whispering warnings she couldn't ignore. Amara bounced on the sagging couch, clutching her stuffed rabbit, Mr. Floppy, its once white fur now a soft gray from years of love. "Mama, is the mansion like a castle?" she asked, her voice bright with excitement. "Does it have a big garden? A pool? Will I have my room?" Her curls bobbed as she swung her legs, oblivious to the weight pressing on her mother's shoulders. Lila forced a smile, kneeling beside her. "It's not a castle, sweetheart, but it's where Mama's new job is. There's a garden, and you'll have a little room next to mine. No pool, but we'll find fun things to do, okay?" She smoothed Amara's hair, her heart aching at the innocence in her daughter's eyes. "Remember what we talked about? This is a serious place. The man I'm caring for, Mr. Sterling, is very sick. We have to be quiet, respectful, and stay out of trouble." "I'll be good, Mama," Amara promised, hugging Mr. Floppy tightly. "I'll be quiet, like a mouse, just like you taught me. And Mr. Floppy will help me be brave." Lila pulled her daughter into a tight embrace, breathing in the familiar scent of her strawberry shampoo. "You're already brave, my love," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. Amara was her anchor, so she kept fighting through every rejection and every late-night worry. But the mansion's eerie silence and Thomas's warning about Vanessa Blake, the fiancée, stirred a fear Lila couldn't shake. What kind of place demanded such secrecy? And what would it mean for Amara, growing up in a house that felt more like a mausoleum than a home? As Amara scampered to pack her crayons, Lila sank onto the couch, her hands trembling. She reached for her grandmother's old journal, its leather cover worn smooth from years of handling. Mama Rose had been her rock, raising her in a small Atlanta bungalow filled with the aroma of sage and the hum of gospel music. When Lila's parents died in a car crash at 16, Mama Rose had stepped in, teaching her not just caregiving, but resilience. "The world will test you, Lila," she'd said, her eyes fierce with love, "but you've got a heart stronger than steel. Use it." Those lessons had carried Lila through her ex-partner's abandonment 5 years ago, when he'd walked out after Amara's birth, leaving her to juggle waitressing jobs and caregiving gigs. Losing her last job as a home health aide after the agency downsized was a blow, but Mama Rose's voice still echoed. "Healing starts with love and truth." Lila opened the journal, its pages filled with Mama Rose's neat script. Recipes for herbal teas to ease pain, tips for soothing bedridden patients, and notes on reading a person's spirit through their eyes. As a teenager, Lila had scoffed at these old-world ways, dreaming of a nursing degree and a life beyond their neighborhood struggles. But life had a way of humbling her, and now, with no degree and bills piling up, she clung to her grandmother's wisdom. A passage caught her eye. "A patient silence speaks louder than words. Listen with your heart." Lila traced the words, wondering about James Sterling. Thomas had said he was changed and unreachable, but something in his tone felt off, like a lock hiding a secret. "Mama, look!" Amara held up a drawing, a colorful sketch of a garden with a stick-figure girl and rabbit dancing under a rainbow. "This is for our new room. It'll make it happy." Lila's eyes stung with tears. "It's perfect, baby," she said, taping the drawing to the suitcase. Amara's optimism was a gift, a light in their darkest moments. But Lila couldn't shake the fear that the Sterling mansion might dim that light. She thought of her childhood, helping Mama Rose bandage a neighbor's wound or brew chamomile tea for a feverish child. Those acts of care had felt sacred, a way to mend the world's cracks. Could she find that purpose in the Sterling mansion, or would its shadows swallow them both? She tucked Amara into bed, their last night in the apartment. As her daughter drifted off, Mr. Floppy nestled under her chin. Lila sat by the window, staring at the city lights. She remembered the day Amara was born, her tiny hand gripping Lila's finger, a promise of love that no hardship could break. That love had carried them through eviction threats, empty cupboards, and sleepless nights. It would take them now into the unknown of the Sterling mansion. Lila flipped to a blank page in the journal and wrote, "Dear Mama Rose, I got the job. It's scary, but it's for Amara. Please help me be strong, like you were. Please help me find the truth in that place." She closed the journal, her resolve hardening. The mansion might hold secrets, but Lila had faced worse: grief, betrayal, poverty, and come out stronger. For Amara, she would walk through fire. But as she packed the last box, a chill ran through her. Thomas's warning about mistakes, Clara's caution about Vanessa, and the empty picture hooks lingered like ghosts. What had she and Amara stepped into? Lila kissed Amara's forehead, whispering, "We'll be okay, my love." Deep down, she prayed it was true, but the road ahead felt like a tightrope over a storm. Lila Washington stood outside the main suite of the Sterling mansion, her heart thudding against her ribcage. The heavy oak door loomed before her, its polished surface reflecting the faint glow of a chandelier in the hallway. It was 6 a.m., her first official day as James Sterling's caregiver, and the weight of the moment pressed down like a storm cloud. Her hands, still trembling from the whirlwind of moving the night before, adjusted the tray of medical supplies she carried: gauze, antiseptic, a basin for washing. She took a deep breath, recalling Mama Rose's words from her journal. A patient silence speaks louder than words. Lila knocked softly, the sound swallowed by the mansion's eerie quiet. "Enter," a sharp female voice called from within. Lila pushed the door open, stepping into a room that felt more like a cathedral than a bedroom. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed manicured gardens, their curtains drawn back to let in the pale morning light. The space was vast, with a four-poster bed at its center, surrounded by medical equipment that hummed softly. James Sterling lay in the hospital-style bed, his frame diminished beneath crisp white sheets. His face, once commanding in the newspaper photos Lila had seen, was now gaunt, his blue eyes fixed on the ceiling, vacant as a winter sky. Yet, even in his stillness, there was a quiet strength, a trace of the man who had once led Sterling Enterprises. Beside the bed stood Vanessa Blake, James's fiancée, her presence as striking as a magazine cover. Her designer dress, a sleek emerald number, hugged her frame, and her manicured nails tapped impatiently on her phone. Her sharp and floral perfume filled the air, clashing with the sterile scent of antiseptic. She glanced at Lila, her perfect nose wrinkling slightly. "You're the new help?" she asked, her tone dripping with disdain. "Dr. Rachel Monroe will be here soon with instructions. Follow them exactly, and don't get any ideas about doing more. James doesn't need your creativity." Lila nodded, swallowing the urge to respond. She set the tray on a side table and approached the bed, her sneakers silent on the plush rug. "Good morning, Mr. Sterling," she said softly, her voice steady despite Vanessa's scrutiny. "I'm Lila, your caregiver. I'll be looking after you today." James didn't move, his eyes unblinking, his chest rising and falling with mechanical precision. Vanessa scoffed, not looking up from her phone. "Don't bother talking to him. He's been like this since the accident. Brain damage. Thoroughly checked out. Dr. Monroe says it's permanent." She flicked her hair, her diamond earrings catching the light. "I have a meeting. Make sure he's clean and fed before I'm back." As Vanessa swept out, her heels clicking on the marble floor, Lila felt a pang of unease. The fiancé's dismissal of James was cold, transactional, as if he were a broken machine rather than a man. Lila turned back to James, studying his face. His jaw was slack, but his skin wasn't as pale as she'd expected for someone bedridden for months. She leaned closer, checking his chart clipped to the bed. The notes, signed by Dr. Monroe, detailed severe brain trauma from a car accident, with no prognosis for recovery. Yet something felt off, like a melody played in the wrong key. The door opened again, and Dr. Rachel Monroe entered, her white coat crisp and her sharp features set in a frown. She carried a medical bag, its contents clinking softly. "Ms. Washington," she said, her voice clipped. "I'm Dr. Monroe, James's physician. Your role is simple: basic hygiene, feeding through a tube, and turning him every 2 hours to prevent bed sores. No deviations, no attempts to engage him. Interaction confuses him and could worsen his condition. Understood?" "Yes, ma'am," Lila replied, her tone professional, though her instincts bristled. Mama Rose had always taught her to connect with patients, to treat them as people, not puzzles. But Dr. Monroe's orders were absolute, and Lila couldn't risk Amara's future by disobeying. Dr. Monroe ran the routine with clinical precision, demonstrating how to adjust James's pillows and check his feeding tube. Lila listened intently, but her eyes kept drifting to James. As Dr. Monroe turned him to show the proper technique, Lila noticed his hand twitch faintly, a slight movement that could have been a reflex. But when she brushed his arm while repositioning him, his fingers curled, almost imperceptibly, as if responding to her touch. Her pulse quickened. She'd seen this before with a stroke patient years ago, a sign of awareness trapped beneath the surface. Dr. Monroe didn't notice. Her focus was on the chart. She said, "I'll administer his medication later," snapping her bag shut. "Stick to the schedule. I'll check in this afternoon." With that, she left, the door closing with a soft thud. Along with James, Lila began the morning care. Her movements gentle but deliberate. She washed his face with a warm cloth, speaking softly as she worked. "I know you're in there, Mr. Sterling," she murmured, her voice barely above a whisper. "I will take good care of you, just like I promised Amara I'd take care of us." She paused, watching his eyes. No response, but the air felt charged, as if he were listening. As she turned him to change the sheets, she noticed something else. His muscles, though weakened, weren't as atrophied as they should be for someone immobile for months. His arms retained a faint definition, and his legs were not as wasted as expected. Lila frowned, her mind racing. Mama Rose's journal had a note about muscle tone in coma patients. Prolonged immobility led to severe wasting, yet James's body told a different story. She rechecked his chart, noting the heavy sedatives listed: midazolam, lorazepam, drugs meant to keep him calm, but not typically used long-term for brain damage. After settling Amara into their small room with a bedtime story that evening, Lila sat at the narrow desk, her grandmother's journal open before her. Amara's drawing of a rainbow garden hung on the wall, a splash of color in the stark space. Lila flipped to a page on assessing patience. "Trust your hands and heart. A body never lies." She scribbled a note. "James, muscle tone too strong, hand twitch, possible response to touch. The chart says brain damage, but the signs don't match." Lila's thoughts churned. Was James truly as gone as they claimed, or was something keeping him silent? Thomas's secrecy, Vanessa's indifference, and Dr. Monroe's rigid control raised red flags. She recalled Clara Thompson's warning about Vanessa, the housekeeper's guarded eyes hinting at unspoken truths. The mansion's empty picture hooks flashed in her mind, a puzzle piece she couldn't place. She closed the journal, her resolve hardening. Mama Rose had taught her to listen to the silent and to seek truth where others saw only shadows. Lila would watch James closely, document every sign, and trust her instincts. For Amara, for her survival, and now for the man lying helpless in that vast room, she would uncover the truth. But a chill settled over her as she blew out the candle and slipped into bed. The Sterling mansion was a maze of secrets, and Lila had just taken her first step inside. The Sterling mansion's hallways stretched like a labyrinth, their polished floors reflecting the dim glow of sconces. Amara, clutching her stuffed rabbit, Mr. Floppy, tiptoed through the corridors, her small frame dwarfed by the towering portraits and heavy drapes. Lila had warned her to stay in their modest staff quarters, to keep quiet and out of sight, but the mansion was a wonderland to a child's eyes. A flicker of color, a red bird darting past an open window, had lured her from their room, her curiosity overriding her mother's rules. She moved like a shadow, her sneakers silent, her heart racing with the thrill of exploration. The mansion felt alive, whispering secrets in its creaks and echoes, and Amara, ever the adventurer, wanted to listen. She paused at a slightly ajar door leading to James Sterling's main suite. Lila was downstairs with Mrs. Clara Thompson, the housekeeper, reviewing schedules, leaving Amara alone for a rare moment. The bird had vanished, but the open door beckoned. Amara peeked inside, her breath catching at the sight of the vast room, its windows framing the morning sun. James lay in his hospital bed, his face still, his eyes fixed on the ceiling. The machines beside him hummed softly, a steady rhythm that felt out of place in the mansion's silence. Amara hesitated, remembering Lila's words. "Mr. Sterling is very sick. We mustn't disturb him." But something about his stillness drew her closer, like a puzzle begging to be solved. "Hello," she whispered, stepping inside, her voice barely audible. "I'm Amara. Mama helps you." She clutched Mr. Floppy tighter, his floppy ears brushing her chin. James didn't move, but Amara noticed his eyes flicker, a tiny shift when she spoke, like a candle catching a breeze. She tilted her head, studying him. "You're not sleeping, are you? Your eyes move, like my friend Lily at school, when she pretends to nap, but listens to everything." Amara crept closer, her curiosity outweighing her caution. On the bedside table sat a medicine cup, its contents a cloudy gray, not like the clear syrup she'd seen Lily take for allergies. She frowned, her small brow furrowing. "Lily's medicine is pink and tastes like cherries. This looks weird." She leaned in, sniffing the cup, then wrinkled her nose at its sharp chemical scent. "That's not nice medicine," she murmured, her voice firm with a child's certainty. Footsteps echoed in the hallway, sharp and purposeful. Amara's heart leapt, and she darted behind the heavy curtains, her small body hidden in their folds. She peeked out as Dr. Rachel Monroe entered, her white coat pristine, her medical bag clinking with vials. The doctor's sharp features were set in a scowl, her movements brisk as she approached the bedside table. She pulled a small bottle from her bag, its label obscured, and added a few drops to the medicine cup. The liquid grew cloudier, swirling like storm clouds in a glass. Dr. Monroe set it down, muttering, "This should keep him quiet for today." She didn't touch James or check his chart, just turned and left, her footsteps fading into the mansion's silence. Amara waited, breathing until she was sure the doctor was gone. She crept out, her eyes wide as she stared at the cup. "That's not right," she whispered to Mr. Floppy, her voice trembling but resolute. "Mama says medicine helps people, not makes them sleepier." She looked at James, his eyes still fixed upward, but there was a tension in his jaw, a faint tightening that hadn't been there before. "You're sad, aren't you?" she said softly. "For example, when Mama thinks I'm asleep, I hear her cry at night. Don't worry. I'll tell Mama." That evening, in their small room, Lila tucked Amara into bed, the glow of a single lamp casting soft shadows. Amara's rainbow garden drawing hung above the desk, a burst of color against the plain walls. Lila smoothed the blanket, her mind still on James's subtle hand twitch from that morning, the muscle tone that didn't match his chart. She kissed Amara's forehead, ready to turn out the light, when Amara sat up, clutching Mr. Floppy. "Mama," she said, her voice low, as if sharing a secret. "I saw something today in Mr. Sterling's room." Lila's heart skipped, her hands freezing on the blanket. "Amara, you know you're not supposed to wander. Did anyone see you?" Amara shook her head, her curls bouncing. "No, Mama. I was quiet like a mouse, just like you said. But the doctor, Dr. Monroe, put something in Mr. Sterling's water. It made it all cloudy, and it didn't smell good. It makes him sleepy, but he's not sleeping." His eyes move, Mama, like he's listening. Lila's breath caught, her mind racing back to James's chart, the heavy sedatives listed, and the twitch she'd felt. She hugged Amara tightly, her voice steady despite the storm in her chest. "You're sure, sweetheart? You saw her add something?" Amara nodded, her eyes wide with conviction. "It wasn't like Lily's medicine at school. It looked wrong. And Mr. Sterling's sad, Mama. I could tell." Lila's thoughts spun. Mama Rose's journal had a note about sedatives. "Too much quiets the mind, not just the body. Watch for signs of a soul trapped inside." Amara's words confirmed what Lila's instincts had whispered. James wasn't as gone as they claimed. Dr. Monroe's actions, the cloudy liquid, pointed to something deliberate, something sinister. But why? And who was involved? Thomas's cold warning about discretion and Vanessa's indifference flashed in her mind, pieces of a puzzle she couldn't yet solve. "Thank you for telling me, baby," Lila said, her voice soft but firm. "This is very important. Did anyone else see you in his room?" "No, Mama," Amara said, yawning. "I hid behind the curtains. I'm good at hiding." Lila smiled, despite the fear curling in her gut. "You're my brave girl. Now, sleep tight with Mr. Floppy. We'll talk more tomorrow." As Amara drifted off, her breathing soft and even, Lila opened Mama Rose's journal, her hands trembling. She wrote, "Amara saw Dr. M add cloudy liquid to James's water. Matches hand twitch. Muscle tone. Not brain damage. Possible drugging? Need to watch closer." She closed the journal, her resolve steeling. Amara's innocent eyes had seen what the mansion's adults had missed, and Lila wouldn't let that truth slip away. But the weight of it settled over her like a fog. The Sterling mansion was no castle. It was a cage, and James was its prisoner. Lila whispered a prayer, asking Mama Rose for courage. For Amara, for James, she would dig deeper, but the shadows of the mansion seemed to watch her every move. Lila Washington pushed her medical cart into the main suite, the wheels whispering against the marble floor. The morning sun streamed through the tall windows, casting golden streaks across James Sterling's hospital bed. Her pulse quickened as she recalled Amara's words from the previous night. The cloudy liquid in James's medicine cup, the sharp chemical smell. His eyes flickering with awareness. Lila's hands steadied on the cart, her resolve anchored by Mama Rose's journal, tucked safely in her apron pocket. The note she'd written last night burned in her memory. Possible drugging. Today, she would test that theory, but she had to be careful. Cameras blinked in the room's corners, and Dr. Rachel Monroe's strict orders echoed in her mind. Vanessa Blake, James's fiancée, was absent, her usual morning presence replaced by a note on the bedside table. At yoga, follow Dr. M's instructions. The absence felt like a small mercy, giving Lila space to work without scrutiny. She approached the bed, her movements deliberate, her voice soft. "Good morning, Mr. Sterling," she said, adjusting his pillow. "It's Lila. We're going to get you cleaned up today." James's face remained still, his blue eyes fixed on the ceiling. But Lila watched closely, searching for the signs Amara had described. She prepared the bathing supplies, filled a basin with warm water, and laid a soft cloth. The mechanical lift hummed as she carefully maneuvered James from the bed to a padded chair, her hands gentle but precise. As she washed his arm, she noticed it again, a faint twitch in his fingers, like a pulse beneath the surface. Her heart raced. She leaned closer, her voice barely a whisper, mindful of the cameras. "Mr. Sterling, can you hear me? If you can, blink twice." For a moment, nothing. Then, two deliberate, slow, and distinct blinks, his eyes locking onto hers. Lila's breath caught, a surge of adrenaline mixing with relief. She glanced at the camera, keeping her face neutral, and continued her task, dipping the cloth in water. "Are you being drugged?" she whispered, her lips barely moving as she wiped his shoulder. Two more blinks, clear and intentional. Her hands trembled, but she steadied them, pretending to adjust the basin. "Do they know you're aware?" she asked, her voice low, her eyes on his. One blink. No. Lila's mind spun. James was trapped, conscious but silenced, his body a prison. The cloudy liquid Amara saw, the sedatives in his chart, Thomas Sterling's secrecy. It all pointed to a deliberate act. But why? And how deep did it go? She needed to protect James and free him, but the cameras meant she had to play this carefully. "I'm going to help you," she whispered, her voice soft but fierce. "But we have to be very careful. Blink twice if you trust me." Two blinks, and then a faint pressure as his fingers curled around her hand, a subtle squeeze that could have been missed. Lila's heart swelled with determination, and something more profound, a connection forged in this shared secret. She saw not just a patient, but a man fighting to reclaim his life, his eyes holding a spark of gratitude and something warmer, something that made her cheeks flush. To cover her emotions, Lila began a professional monologue for the cameras. "All right, Mr. Sterling, let's get you comfortable," she said, her tone brisk as she adjusted his position. But as she worked, she shared a quiet story, her voice low enough to evade the microphones. "Amara drew a picture for our room, a garden with rainbows. She says it makes any place feel like home. When you're better, maybe she'll draw one for you." James's eyes softened, a flicker of a smile in their depths, and Lila felt a spark ignite between them, a fragile thread of trust and hope. She finished the bath, her movements steady despite the storm in her chest. As she lowered James back to the bed, she noticed a tear slip down his cheek, glistening in the sunlight. Her heart ached. Shame, fear, awareness, all trapped in his silent gaze. She wiped the tear gently, her touch lingering. "We'll figure this out," she murmured, her words a vow. "You're not alone anymore." Later that evening, Lila sat at the desk in their small room, Amara asleep with Mr. Floppy clutched tight. The rainbow drawing glowed faintly under the lamp, a reminder of her daughter's light. Lila opened Mama Rose's journal, her pen scratching across a new page. James blinked twice. Understands. Aware. Drugged. They don't know. Hand squeeze. Tear. He trusts me. Must find proof. But cameras are everywhere. She paused, her thoughts drifting to James's eyes, the warmth in them despite his pain. It wasn't just duty driving her now. It was the man she'd glimpsed, the one fighting to break free. She recalled a moment from her past, caring for a stroke patient who'd squeezed her hand after weeks of silence. Mama Rose had said, "That's the soul speaking, Lila. When words fail, the heart finds a way." James's squeeze felt like that, a bridge between them, a promise of partnership. But the danger was real. Dr. Monroe's cloudy liquid, Thomas's warning about discretion, Vanessa's cold indifference. They were pieces of a puzzle that could cost Lila and Amara everything if she misstepped. Lila closed the journal, her resolve hardening like steel. She would document every detail, watch every move, and protect James. But as she glanced at Amara's sleeping form, a chill ran through her. The mansion's shadows seemed to creep closer, the camera's red lights like eyes in the dark. She prayed to Mama Rose for the courage to face what lay ahead. James trusted her, and that trust was a flame she wouldn't let die. But the truth, she sensed, would come at a price, and the Sterling mansion was already counting the cost. Lila Washington's hands trembled as she pushed her medical cart down the Sterling mansion's silent corridor, the wheels whispering secrets against the marble floor. The morning light filtered through tall windows, but the warmth couldn't pierce the chill in her heart. James Sterling's 2 deliberate blinks, his faint hand squeeze, and the tear she'd wiped from his cheek yesterday had confirmed it. He was aware, trapped in his own body by drugs. Amara's observation of Dr. Rachel Monroe's cloudy liquid had lit the fuse, and Lila's resolve burned brighter than ever. Mama Rose's journal, tucked in her apron, urged her forward. Truth is a light in the dark, but it casts dangerous shadows. She had to find proof, but the mansion's ever-watchful cameras meant every move was risky. Lila tended to James in the main suite, her movements steady for the camera's red eyes. "Good morning, Mr. Sterling," she said, her voice calm as she adjusted his feeding tube. His eyes met hers, a flicker of gratitude in their depths, and she felt that spark again, the quiet connection growing between them. She whispered, too low for the microphones, "I'm working on it. Stay strong." A single blink answered her, a silent vow of trust that steadied her nerves. As she bathed him, she noticed his fingers twitch again, stronger now, as if fighting the sedative's grip. She longed to tell him about Amara's discovery, to share the hope she clung to, but the cameras forced her silence. That afternoon, in the staff kitchen during a rare break, Lila sought out Mrs. Clara Thompson, the housekeeper whose warning about Vanessa Blake had lingered like a storm cloud. Clara stood at the counter, chopping vegetables with precise strokes, her gray bun tight and her apron spotless. Her eyes, though kind, held a guarded wisdom, as if she'd seen too much in her 30 years serving the Sterlings. Lila hesitated, then spoke softly. "Clara, can we talk? Somewhere private?" Clara's knife paused, her gaze sharpening. "Now, pantry," she said, leading Lila to a cramped room lined with canned goods. The door clicked shut, muffling the mansion's hum. "What's on your mind, girl?" Clara asked, her voice low but firm. Lila took a deep breath, her words careful. "It's about James. His chart says brain damage, but I've seen signs. Blinks, hand movements. Amara saw Dr. Monroe put something cloudy in his water, making him sleepy but not asleep. I think they're drugging him on purpose." Clara's face hardened, her eyes glinting with something like recognition. "I've suspected as much," she said, her voice a whisper. James was set to merge Sterling Enterprises with a competitor, a deal that'd bring in millions, but open the books to auditors. Thomas fought it tooth and nail, said it'd ruin the family's control. 2 weeks later, James's car crashed. Brakes failed, they said, but it never sat right with me. Lila's pulse quickened. Why would Thomas want to stop the merger? And why drug James? Clara leaned closer, her voice barely audible. Money and power, girl. Always follow the money. Thomas hired Dr. Monroe, his old college friend, to oversee James's care. No other doctors allowed. No visitors except Vanessa, who's more interested in her wardrobe than her fiancé. Thomas now holds the power of attorney, controlling every Sterling Enterprises dime. And there's more. She pulled a folded newspaper clipping from her apron. Its edges yellowed. This ran a month before the crash. Edward Sterling, James's father, died 20 years ago, supposedly of a heart attack. But he was digging into the company's early days, asking questions about where the money came from. I was his confidant. He suspected dirty dealings, money laundering, maybe worse. Lila's hands clenched, the pieces clicking into place. So Thomas and Dr. Monroe are keeping James quiet to control the company? But why not? She stopped. The word kill too heavy to say. Clara's eyes darkened. They need him alive, for now, to keep the board and shareholders calm. A dead air raises questions. A drugged one's just a tragedy. She paused, her voice softening. Edward was my mentor, a good man who wanted to preserve the family's legacy. I stayed with James, hoping to protect him. But I've been waiting for someone like you, Lila, with eyes to see. Before Lila could respond, a sharp knock interrupted. They froze, but only a delivery boy was at the kitchen door. Lila's heart still raced as she followed Clara back to the counter. That night, in their small room, Amara slept soundly, Mr. Floppy tucked under her arm, her rainbow drawing glowing under the lamp. Lila sat at the desk, opening Mama Rose's journal. She wrote, Clara confirms suspicions. James was drugged to stop the merger. Thomas and Dr. M are involved, maybe Vanessa. Edward's death is suspicious. Need hard proof. As she closed the journal, a soft thud came from the hallway. Lila crept to the door, finding a small envelope slipped underneath. Inside was a USB drive and a note in sharp handwriting. From a friend betrayed by Thomas. Check the footage. Be careful. Her breath caught. She hid the drive in Mama Rose's journal, her mind racing. Who was this ally? And what did the footage show? The next morning, Lila slipped into the staff lounge during a quiet moment, using an old laptop Clara kept hidden. The USB held grainy security footage from James's room, time-stamped weeks ago. It showed Dr. Monroe injecting an unmarked vial into James's IV, her movements furtive, glancing at the door. Another clip caught Thomas whispering to Vanessa, As long as he's out, the board won't question me. Lila's stomach churned. This was proof, but not enough to go public, not with Thomas's influence and the cameras watching. When she returned to James's room, she whispered, I've got something. Footage. We're not alone in this. His eyes flickered, a spark of hope, and his fingers brushed hers, a fleeting touch that sent warmth through her. She smiled, sharing a quiet memory to keep him grounded. Amara used to sing to my patients, you know, said her songs made them smile inside. I'll bet you'd like her voice. James's lips twitched, the ghost of a smile, and Lila felt their bond deepen, a shared fight binding their hearts. But as she left the room, she noticed her medical cart slightly askew, a bandage roll misplaced. Someone had tampered with it, a warning. Lila's resolve hardened. She had Clara, an anonymous ally, and James's trust. The truth was close, but the mansion's shadows were closing in, and Lila knew the next step could cost her everything. A piercing alarm shattered the Sterling mansion's silence, its wail cutting through the midnight air like a knife. Lila Washington bolted upright in her narrow bed, her heart pounding as the acrid scent of smoke seeped under the door. The staff quarters, tucked in the mansion's east wing, flickered with an ominous orange glow beyond the window. Amara stirred in the small room next door, her sleepy voice calling, "Mama?" Lila's mind raced to the USB drive hidden in Mama Rose's journal, the footage proving James Sterling was being drugged, and the tampered medical cart, a warning from the shadows. Now, fire. This was no accident. Lila threw on her robe, grabbing Amara and Mr. Floppy, her daughter's stuffed rabbit. "Stay close, sweetheart," she whispered, her voice steady despite the fear clawing her chest. The hallway was a haze of smoke, the alarm's shriek drowning out the distant shouts of staff. Lila clutched Amara's hand, navigating the dim corridor toward the main staircase. Her thoughts spun to James, trapped in his hospital bed, and the conspirators, Thomas Sterling, Dr. Rachel Monroe, Vanessa Blake, who wanted him silenced. Had they discovered her suspicions? Outside James's main suite, Lila hesitated, coughing as smoke thickened. The door was ajar, and the room was dark except for the faint hum of medical equipment. She pushed inside, her eyes scanning for James. He lay still, his blue eyes wide with awareness, starkly contrasting the vacant stare she'd first seen. "I'm here," she said, rushing to his side. "We're getting you out." But as she reached for the mechanical lift, a figure emerged from the shadows. Dr. Monroe's white coat was smudged with soot, a syringe gleaming in her hand. "Stay back," Dr. Monroe hissed, her sharp features twisted with panic. "This is just a precaution, James. Can't you cause trouble?" She moved toward his IV, but before Lila could act, a small shadow darted from under the bed. Amara, clutching Mr. Floppy, her eyes fierce. "No!" Amara shouted, startling the doctor. Lila lunged, knocking the syringe from Dr. Monroe's hand. It skittered across the floor, its contents spilling harmlessly. Dr. Monroe cursed, her composure cracking, and fled into the smoky hallway as footsteps thundered outside. "Mama, I switched her bag," Amara whispered, her voice triumphant, like in my spy movie. "I used water and food coloring from the kitchen. It's not real medicine." Lila's heart swelled with pride and fear. She said, "You're so brave, baby, but you scared me," pulling Amara close. She checked James, his eyes clear, his hand gripping the sheet, a sign the drugs were wearing off. "We need to move, now." Before she could act, Nathan Brooks, James's former security chief, burst in with 2 firefighters. His broad frame filled the doorway, his face grim but determined. "Lila, Amara's safe with me," he said, his voice cutting through the chaos. "The fire's in the East Wing. Your rooms. It's arson, no question." He nodded to the firefighters, who began unhooking James's equipment for evacuation. Lila's blood ran cold in their rooms, where the USB drive was hidden. "My journal," she whispered. But Nathan grabbed her arm. "No time. Sophia's safe, and so is James. Let's go." As they moved James to a stretcher, Vanessa Blake appeared in the doorway, her emerald dress pristine despite the chaos, her face a mask of concern. "What's happening? Why isn't James evacuated?" she demanded, her voice shrill. Amara, clinging to Lila, pointed at her. "You told someone to burn the East Wing. I heard you on the phone, saying end the problem." Her small voice rang with conviction, and Vanessa's perfect mask slipped, a flash of guilt crossing her eyes before she regained control. "Nonsense," Vanessa snapped, but her hands trembled. "This child is delusional. Get them out, now." The firefighters hustled them toward the guest house, smoke billowing behind. Lila held Amara tightly, her mind racing. Amara's eavesdropping confirmed Vanessa's role in the fire, and Nathan's presence suggested he was the friend betrayed by Thomas, who'd left the USB. But the journal was likely gone with her notes and the drive. As they reached the guest house, Clara Thompson met them, her gray bun askew, but her eyes sharp. "Fire's contained," Clara said, her voice low. "But it was set deliberately. Electrical tampering in your quarters. Someone wanted you gone, Lila." Lila nodded, her throat tight. She settled James in a temporary bed, his eyes meeting hers with a fierce intensity. "You're safe," she whispered, squeezing his hand. His fingers pressed back, stronger now, and she felt that spark again. The bond forged in trust, now tempered by danger. Amara heard Vanessa. She murmured, too low for the others. "She's part of this. We're close." James's eyes flickered with gratitude, and he managed a faint nod, his first precise movement. Lila's heart lifted, but fear lingered. The fire was a message, a desperate move by Thomas, Vanessa, and Dr. Monroe to silence them. She thought of Mama Rose's journal, its wisdom now ash, but its lessons lived in her. Truth is a light in the dark. She'd rebuild that light, with or without the drive. In the guest house, as firefighters cleared the mansion, Lila sat with Amara, who clutched Mr. Floppy, her small face defiant. "I wasn't scared, Mama," she said. "I knew you'd come." "You're my hero," Lila said, kissing her forehead. But her eyes drifted to James, Clara, and Nathan, who exchanged a knowing glance. The USB might be lost, but Nathan's grim nod suggested he had more. The conspirators had tried to burn away the truth, but Lila, James, Amara, and their allies were still standing. The fight was far from over, and the mansion's shadows grew darker. The guest house of the Sterling mansion buzzed with quiet urgency as the last of the firefighters departed, their sirens fading into the night. Lila Washington stood by James Sterling's temporary bed, her hands steady as she adjusted his blanket, but her heart raced with the weight of the fire's implications. The arson in the East Wing, targeting her and Amara's rooms, had destroyed Mama Rose's journal and the USB drive, her proof of James's drugging. Yet, Amara's bravery in switching Dr. Rachel Monroe's medical bag and her accusation against Vanessa Blake had exposed the conspirators' desperation. James's eyes, now clearer, met hers with a fierce resolve, his faint nod a silent promise to fight on. Lila felt their bond deepen, a shared determination forged in the ashes of the night's chaos. Clara Thompson, the housekeeper, stood at a small table, trembling hands as she spread out a stack of documents she'd salvaged from Thomas Sterling's private study in the guest house. Her gray bun was still askew from the evacuation, but her eyes burned with purpose. James's former security chief, Nathan Brooks, leaned against the wall, his broad frame tense, his gaze flicking to the door as if expecting an ambush. Amara slept on a cot nearby, Mr. Floppy clutched tightly, her soft snores a stark contrast to the tension in the room. Lila glanced at her daughter, gratitude and fear warring in her chest. The fire had been a warning, but it had also brought them here, to a truth darker than she'd imagined. "These papers," Clara said, her voice low but steady, "tell a story that goes back 20 years. Edward Sterling, James's father, didn't die of a heart attack." She slid a faded coroner's report across the table, its edges brittle. Trace amounts of a rare toxin were found in his system, overlooked by the police, who were too cozy with Thomas's allies. Edward was murdered. Lila's breath caught, her fingers brushing James's hand for reassurance. His grip tightened slightly, his eyes darkening with grief. "Murdered?" she whispered. "Why?" Clara's lips pressed into a thin line. Edward built Sterling Enterprises, but its early profits came from dirty money laundering for a cartel, set up by his partner, Charles Monroe. Dr. Rachel's father. Edward discovered it in his final years and wanted to come clean. He gathered evidence, planning to expose the cartel ties and shut down the operation. I helped him quietly, hiding documents in the mansion's old safe. But someone got to him first. Nathan stepped forward, his voice rough. I was Edward's head of security back then. He confided in me, said he feared for his life. After he died, Thomas took over and fired me when I asked too many questions. I've been digging ever since, especially after James's accident. He pulled a small recorder from his pocket, clicking it on. Vanessa's voice crackled through. Ensure the brakes fail before the merger vote. We can't let auditors in. Nathan's eyes met Lila's. The crash was meant to sideline James for a few weeks, long enough for Thomas to kill the merger. But the brakes failed, nearly killed him. Lila's stomach churned, her mind flashing to James's tear-streaked face, his trapped awareness. So Thomas, Vanessa, and Dr. Monroe are keeping James drugged to control the company, just like they silenced Edward? She asked, her voice shaking with anger. Clara nodded, sliding another document forward, a ledger showing offshore accounts tied to Charles Monroe. Dr. Rachel's no ordinary doctor. She's Charles's daughter, trained in pharmacology, with access to experimental sedatives through his cartel contacts. She's been dosing James with a custom mix to keep him pliable and awake, but paralyzed so that Thomas can wield power of attorney without suspicion. James's hand tightened on Lila's, his jaw clenching. She leaned closer, whispering, "We're going to stop them. For you. For your father." His eyes held hers, a spark of gratitude, and something more profound, affection that warmed her despite the horror. She thought of Mama Rose's words, "Healing starts with love and truth." That love was growing for James's survival, and the man she saw in his quiet strength. Nathan's voice cut through. "I left the USB drive, Lila. I've got backups, more footage, and emails between Thomas and Charles. But we need a plan. Thomas has half the city's police in his pocket. Going to them is suicide." Clara's eyes gleamed. "The shareholders' meeting is 3 days from now. Thomas plans to cement his control there. If we can get the evidence to the board and the press, he's done." Lila nodded, her mind racing. But how? The cameras, the fire, they're watching us. Nathan smirked, a glint of defiance. "I know the security system. Edward taught me its blind spots. And Amara. She's been chatting with the gate guard's daughter. She could enter the monitoring room during Take Your Child to Work Day." Lila's heart skipped, fear for Amara clashing with pride. "She's brave, but I can't let her take that risk." "We'll protect her," Clara said, her voice firm. "Edward trusted me to protect his family. I failed him, but I won't forget James. Or you." Lila looked at James, his eyes urging her forward. She squeezed his hand, a silent promise. "Okay, we'll do this together." She shared a quiet memory to keep him grounded, her voice low. "Amara danced with Mr. Floppy when she was little to cheer me up. Said it was magic. We'll find some magic for you, James." His lips twitched, a faint smile, and Lila felt their bond solidify, a lifeline in the storm. As they planned, a creak outside the guest house made them freeze. Nathan checked the window. Nothing but shadows. But Lila's skin prickled. The conspirators had tried fire. What would they try next? She thought of Mama Rose. Truth casts dangerous shadows. The truth was in their hands now, but exposing it would test their courage and their lives. The guest house of the Sterling mansion was a fortress of whispers as dawn broke, its windows fogged with the morning chill. Lila Washington sat beside James Sterling's temporary bed, her fingers brushing his as she checked his pulse, a routine that now felt like a lifeline. His eyes, clearer each day as the sedatives faded, held a fierce determination mirrored in hers. The fire that had gutted their rooms had been a desperate strike by Thomas Sterling, Vanessa Blake, and Dr. Rachel Monroe, but it had only strengthened their resolve. Clara Thompson's revelation of Edward Sterling's murder and Nathan Brooks's backup evidence, a recorder with Vanessa's incriminating words and hidden footage, had lit a path forward. The shareholders' meeting, now 2 days away, was their chance to expose the truth, but the stakes were higher than ever. Lila adjusted James's blanket, her voice low to evade hidden microphones. "We're close, James. The meeting's our shot to end this." His hand squeezed hers, a steady pressure that sent warmth through her, a silent vow of partnership. She smiled, sharing a quiet memory to keep him grounded. "Amara used to make me paper flowers when I was sad. Said they'd bloom forever. We'll make something bloom out of this, I promise." James's lips twitched, a faint smile, and Lila felt their bond deepen, a thread of hope woven through their shared fight. Clara stood at the table, sorting through the salvaged documents, her gray bun tight, her eyes sharp with purpose. "Thomas plans to use the meeting to lock in his control of Sterling Enterprises," she said, her voice steady. "He'll present James as incapacitated, cement his power of attorney, and block any audits. We need to get the evidence, Nathan's recordings, the ledger, to the board and the press." Nathan, leaning against the wall, nodded, his broad frame tense. "I've got contacts at a local news outlet, and I'm ready to run the story if we can get the proof out. But Thomas has the security team on lockdown, and Charles Monroe, Dr. Rachel's father, will be there, pulling strings. He's the one who tied Edward to the cartel years ago. He's untouchable, or so he thinks." Lila's heart sank, recalling Clara's revelation about Charles's role in Edward's murder. "How do we get past security? The cameras, the guards. They'll stop us before we reach the conference room." Nathan's eyes glinted with defiance. "Amara's our ace. She's been playing with the gate guard's daughter, Mia. Tomorrow is Take Your Child to Work Day at Sterling Enterprises. Mia's dad lets her into the monitoring room to watch the screens. Amara could slip in and turn off the cameras for a few minutes. It's risky, but it's our best shot." Lila's stomach twisted, fear for Amara clashing with their desperate need. "She's clever, but I can't put her in danger again after the fire." Clara placed a hand on Layla's shoulder, her touch firm but kind. "We'll protect her, Lila. I failed Edward, but I won't forget James. Or your girl. She's small, but she's sharp. We'll guide her." Amara, awake now, sat up on her cot, clutching Mr. Floppy. "I can do it, Mama. I'm good at sneaking, like in my spy games. I'll help Mr. Sterling." Her eyes shone with the same courage that had led her to switch Dr. Monroe's medical bag. Lila knelt beside her, her heart aching. "You're my brave girl, but this is dangerous. Promise you'll stay with Mia's dad and do precisely what we say." "I promise," Amara said, hugging Mr. Floppy. "Mr. Floppy thinks we'll win." Lila smiled, despite the fear, and kissed her forehead. She turned to James, who nodded, his eyes urging her to trust their plan. The moment was interrupted by a news broadcast flickering on the guest house's small TV. Dr. Monroe's face filled the screen, her voice tearful but calculated. "As James Sterling's physician, I must warn you. His injuries have left him mentally unstable. His recent agitation suggests he needs psychiatric care for his safety." Lila's blood boiled, but James's hand tightened on hers, grounding her. The camera panned, revealing a man in a tailored suit behind Dr. Monroe, his face partially shadowed, but unmistakable. Charles Monroe. Amara gasped, pointing at the screen. "Mama, that's the man from the doctor's phone. In the picture with Mr. Sterling's daddy. There is red stuff on his hands. Lila's breath caught. She remembered Amara's words about the insurance folder on Dr. Monroe's phone, showing Charles with blood on his hands beside Edward's body. "You're sure, sweetheart?" she asked, her voice trembling. Amara nodded, her eyes wide. "It was him, Mama." He looked angry. Nathan's jaw clenched. "That's our leverage. If Dr. Monroe's got that photo, she's holding it over Charles to protect herself. We need to get that phone to the meeting." James's eyes flickered with urgency, his fingers pressing Lila's. She leaned close, whispering, "We'll use it, James. We'll end this." His nod was more decisive now, his strength returning with each day free of the drugs. Lila felt a surge of love, not just duty, but a deep care for the man fighting beside her. Clara outlined the plan. Nathan would smuggle the recorder to his press contact. Lila would escort James to the meeting to prove his awareness, and Amara would help turn off the cameras. "We've got one shot," Clara said. "Charles, Thomas, and Vanessa will be there, ready to crush us. But Edward wanted the truth out. We'll do it for him." A creak outside the guest house made them freeze as they finalized details. Nathan checked the window. Only a branch in the wind. But Lila's skin prickled. The conspirators had tried fire. Now they faced exposure. Mama Rose's words echoed. "Truth casts dangerous shadows." Lila looked at James, Amara, Clara, and Nathan, their faces united in purpose. The shareholders' meeting was their battleground, and the truth was their weapon, but the cost of wielding it loomed larger than ever. The Sterling Enterprises Conference Center thrummed with tension, its vast hall packed with shareholders, board members, and reporters, their murmurs rising like a storm. Lila Washington stood in the parking garage below, her hands steadying James Sterling as he stepped from the car, his cane clicking against the concrete. His strength had surged since the drugs began to fade, but his eyes held a fire that outshone his physical recovery. Amara clutched Mr. Floppy, the stuffed rabbit hiding a USB drive with damning footage, and a photo tying Charles Monroe to Edward Sterling's murder. Clara Thompson and Nathan Brooks flanked them, their faces set with grim determination. The shareholders' meeting was their battleground, and the truth was their weapon. Lila adjusted James's tie, her voice low. "You're ready for this, James. We all are." His hand found hers, a warm squeeze that sent courage through her veins. "Because of you," he whispered, his voice rough but clear, the first words she'd heard him speak. Her heart swelled, their bond a beacon in the chaos. She smiled, whispering, "Amara says you're her knight now. Let's finish this." His faint smile mirrored hers, a shared resolve forged through trust. Nathan checked his watch. "Amara's with Mia's dad in the monitoring room. She'll turn off the cameras in 5 minutes. My press contact's ready to broadcast the evidence." Clara nodded, clutching the recorder with Vanessa's incriminating words. The plan was set. Expose Thomas, Vanessa, Dr. Monroe, and Charles before they could solidify control. They took the service elevator, its hum masking their tense silence. As the doors opened, Vanessa Blake stood waiting, her emerald dress pristine, her smile venomous. "Well, the whole gang's here," she said, her voice dripping with mockery. "You're supposed to be in custody, James. Running from the truth?" Lila's grip tightened on James's arm, but Amara stepped forward, clutching Mr. Floppy. "You hurt Mr. Sterling's daddy. I saw the doctor hide pictures in my rabbit, and you were on the phone, talking about breaks." Her voice rang with defiance, and Vanessa's smile faltered, her eyes darting to the stuffed animal. "That's absurd," Vanessa snapped, but her hands shook. She held up her phone. "Someone drained 10 million from Sterling accounts. Care to explain?" Nathan's eyes narrowed, recording her words discreetly. "Keep talking, Vanessa. It's all going on tape." Vanessa lunged for Mr. Floppy, but Clara caught the rabbit with surprising agility, tucking it under her arm. "Now," James said, his voice steady. Lila pushed him forward, his cane tapping as they burst through the conference room doors. The room fell silent, gasps rippling through the crowd as James stood tall, no longer the broken man they'd been told to expect. Dr. Rachel Monroe froze at the podium, her face pale mid-speech about James's instability. Charles Monroe was seated in the front row, his tailored suit impeccable, rose, and his eyes darted to the exits. Lila's heart pounded as Nathan connected his recorder to the room's audio system. Vanessa's voice boomed, "Ensure the brakes fail before the merger vote." Murmurs erupted, cameras flashing. James's voice rang out, clear and commanding. Sterling Enterprises was built on lies. 20 years ago, my father, Edward, discovered our profits came from money laundering, orchestrated by Charles Monroe. When he tried to expose it, he was murdered. He nodded to Clara, who held up Mr. Floppy. "The proof is here, footage of Dr. Monroe drugging me, and a photo of Charles with my father's blood on his hands." Charles shouted, "Lies! He's delusional!" But his voice cracked, and Dr. Monroe edged toward a side door. Clara stepped forward, her voice cutting through the chaos. "Don't move, Rachel. This rabbit's got more than stuffing." She revealed the USB drive, its contents projected onto the screen. Footage of Dr. Monroe's injections, the damning photo of Charles beside Edward's body, blood staining his hands. The room exploded in shouts, reporters surging forward. Charles lunged for the podium, but Amara, with a courage that stunned Lila, stuck out her foot. The cartel kingpin tripped, crashing to the floor. Dr. Monroe grabbed a security guard's gun, her face wild. "This isn't over," she screamed, aiming at James. Lila didn't think. She threw herself before him, her body a shield. But before the shot could ring out, Clara swung Mr. Floppy with the force of her old softball days, striking Dr. Monroe's temple. The doctor crumpled, the gun clattering away. Aligned by Nathan's press contact, FBI agents stormed in, cuffing Charles and Dr. Monroe. Vanessa tried to flee, but security, now loyal to Nathan, blocked her path. James took Lila's hand as the chaos settled, his voice soft. "You saved me, Lila. Again." Amara ran to them, hugging James's leg. "We did it, Mr. Sterling," she said, her eyes shining. Clara approached, her face softening. "That USB, it wasn't just from Nathan. Edward's widow, Margaret, has been in hiding, gathering evidence. She sent it to me, knowing we'd finish what Edward started." Lila's heart pounded, the weight of their victory sinking in. She looked at James, his strength returning, his eyes full of gratitude and something more profound. Love. "We're not done," she said, her voice firm. "But we're together." James nodded, his hand warm in hers, and Lila knew the fight had forged them into something unbreakable. The conference center's chaos faded as FBI agents led Charles Monroe, Dr. Rachel Monroe, and Vanessa Blake away in handcuffs, their faces etched with defeat. Lila Washington stood beside James Sterling's temporary wheelchair, her hand resting on his shoulder, a steady anchor amidst the flurry of reporters' questions and flashing cameras. James's strength had returned enough to stand during the shareholders' meeting, but the effort had drained him. His cane now resting across his lap, his blue eyes, no longer clouded by drugs, held a quiet fire as he watched the conspirators' downfall. Amara clung to Lila's side, Mr. Floppy dangling from her small hand, her eyes wide with awe at their victory. Clara Thompson and Nathan Brooks stood nearby, their faces a mix of relief and resolve. The weight of Edward Sterling's legacy lifted at last. Lila's heart pounded, the adrenaline of the showdown giving way to a flood of emotions, relief, fear, hope. The USB drive hidden in Mr. Floppy, Nathan's recordings, and Amara's courage had exposed the truth. Charles's cartel ties, Edward's murder, and the plot to keep James drugged. Margaret, Edward's widow, had emerged from hiding to provide the final evidence, a secret Clara had guarded for years. But the victory felt fragile, the cost of their fight still raw. Lila glanced at Amara, her daughter's bravery a light in the darkness, and James, whose trust had become her strength. Their bond, forged in whispers and danger, was now more profound, something she hadn't dared name until now. James took her hand, his grip firm despite his fatigue. "Lila," he said, his voice rough but clear, "you saved me. Not just my life, but who I am. You and Amara showed me what real courage looks like and what love means." His eyes softened, a warmth that made her breath catch. "I was trapped, watching them steal everything, but you gave me hope." Lila's cheeks flushed, her heart swelling. She knelt beside him, her voice low. "You fought too, James. Every blink, every squeeze. It was you fighting to come back. We did this together." She paused, sharing a memory to ground them both. "When Amara was little, she'd hold my hand through storms, saying it kept the thunder away. You've been my hand through this storm." Amara giggled, tugging Lila's sleeve. "Does that make Mr. Sterling my night mama, like in my stories?" James smiled, a genuine smile that lit his face. "I'd be honored, Amara." He reached into his pocket, pulling out a simple silver ring, its delicate band etched with a vine pattern. His mother's, not the flashy diamonds Vanessa favored. He looked at Lila, his voice steady despite the crowd. "Lila, I know it's fast, but months trapped in my body taught me what matters. You and Amara are my family, my truth. Will you marry me, both of you? Will you help me rebuild what's been broken?" Amara squealed, bouncing with delight. "Say yes, Mama. Mr. Floppy says yes, too." Clara chuckled, her gray bun bobbing, while Nathan, trying to hide a tear, looked away. Lila's eyes filled with tears, her heart torn between joy and the weight of their journey. She thought of Mama Rose's words, "Love heals all." This love, fierce, selfless, shared with James and Amara, was her truth. "Yes," she whispered, her voice breaking. "Yes, to everything." James slid the ring onto her finger, his touch lingering, and the crowd erupted in cheers, reporters scribbling furiously. But for Lila, the world narrowed to James's eyes, Amara's grin, and the promise of a future they'd fight for together. Later, in the guest house, as the mansion's repairs began, Lila sat with James in a quiet corner. He was starting physical therapy, his muscles relearning what the drugs had stolen, but the emotional scars ran deeper. "It's hard," he admitted, his voice low. "I saw everything. Thomas's betrayal, Vanessa's lies. Therapy's helping, but some days, I feel trapped again." Lila squeezed his hand, her voice soft. "I know about hard days. After my ex left, I'd cry after Amara slept, scared I'd fail her. But we kept going. You will too, with us." James nodded, his eyes grateful, their shared vulnerability weaving them closer. Lila, too, grappled with change. The mansion's wealth, its marble halls, endless rooms, felt alien after years of scraping by. She confided in Clara, who'd become a mentor. "I'm afraid I'll lose myself here," Lila admitted, her voice trembling. "This isn't my world." Clara's eyes softened. "You're stronger than this place, girl. You've got Mama Rose's heart. Make it your world, for you and Amara." That night, Lila tucked Amara into bed and Mr. Floppy nestled beside her. "Mama, are we a family now?" Amara asked, her eyes sleepy but bright. "We are," Lila said, kissing her forehead. "You, me, James, and Mr. Floppy." But as she turned out the light, a shadow lingered. The conspirators were gone, but their secrets echoed in the mansion's walls. Lila held James's ring, its weight a promise and a challenge. The fight wasn't over, but with James and Amara by her side, she was ready for whatever came next. The Sterling mansion, once a cold monument to wealth, now hummed with life as sunlight poured through its open windows. A year had passed since the shareholders' meeting that toppled Charles Monroe, Dr. Rachel Monroe, and Vanessa Blake, and the halls, once sterile, echoed with children's laughter and the scent of blooming flowers. Leila Washington stood in the garden, her silver ring, James Sterling's mother's, glinting on her finger as she adjusted a rose in her hair. Today was their first anniversary, a vow renewal under the same oaks where they'd faced their darkest trials. James stood beside her, his cane a mere accessory now, his blue eyes bright with a strength reborn. Amara danced among the roses, her sundress twirling, Mr. Floppy tucked under her arm, his bow tie slightly askew but proud. Sterling Enterprises had transformed under James and Lila's leadership. The company, once tainted by cartel money, now funds initiatives to combat money laundering and support survivors of trafficking. Drawing on Mama Rose's teachings, Lila had spearheaded community programs, her caregiving heart shaping a new mission. James, through months of physical therapy, had regained much of his strength, but the emotional scars lingered. Late-night talks with Lila, sharing fears of betrayal and loss, had healed him as much as any medicine. "You're my anchor," he told her once, his hand in hers, and Lila had felt their love deepen, a quiet force that mended broken places. Ever the light, Amara had turned her courage into a children's book, Mr. Floppy's Brave Day, its pages filled with drawings of a rabbit outsmarting villains. The book, a surprise bestseller, donated all proceeds to children's charities, and its cover is displayed proudly in the mansion's library. Amara's rainbow drawing, labeled My Family, hung above the fireplace, a crayon testament to their journey. Beside it, in a glass case, sat Mr. Floppy, his worn fur a silent guardian of their triumph, a symbol of the love that had conquered all. The conspirators faced justice. Thomas Sterling, in witness protection, had turned evidence against Charles, his testimony unraveling the cartel's network. Vanessa, imprisoned, penned a tell-all memoir that gathered dust in obscurity. Charles Monroe faced life behind bars, and his empire of lies crumbled. Dr. Rachel Monroe, guided by her mother, Margaret, who'd emerged from hiding, worked at a clinic for at-risk youth, her medical skills now serving redemption. Margaret, a quiet presence at the vow renewal, had shared stories of Edward's dreams with James, her words a bridge to his father's legacy. Lila, standing in the garden, felt the weight of their journey. The mansion's wealth had once intimidated her, its grandeur clashing with her modest roots. She'd confided in Clara Thompson, now the household's heart, managing a bustling staff with her trademark firmness. "I feared I'd lose myself here," Lila had admitted one evening, her voice soft. Clara, her gray bun softened by a smile, had replied, "You've made this place yours, girl. It's not the walls, it's the love you bring." James wrapped his arms around Lila from behind, his voice warm. "Penny for your thoughts?" he asked, his breath tickling her ear. She leaned into him, her hand resting on his. "Just thinking how much can change in a year, how love can heal even the deepest wounds." She turned, meeting his eyes, their bond a quiet fire. "You showed me that, James." He smiled, lifting Amara as she ran to them, her laughter ringing. And you both showed me what family means, he said. Not power or money, but this. He gestured to the garden, where staff and community members mingled, their faces bright with hope. Amara tugged Lila's dress. Mama, look! She pointed to a new flower bed, planted by the children's program. It's our garden, like my drawing. Lila knelt, hugging her. It's perfect, sweetheart. Her eyes drifted to James, then her stomach, where a new life grew. She placed his hand there, her voice soft. Amara might need a new title soon. How does Big Sister sound? Amara's squeal echoed across the lawn, drawing laughs from Clara and Nathan, who stood nearby, his security expertise now guiding the company's reforms. Big Sister, Amara shouted, twirling with Mr. Floppy. Mr. Floppy's ready too. As the sun set, casting a warm glow over the mansion, Lila thought of Mama Rose. Love heals all. The words had carried her through poverty, fear, and fire. Now they shone in this family, forged in adversity. James kissed her forehead. Amara nestled between them, and the garden bloomed with their promise. The mansion, once a cage, was now a home, its heart beating with a legacy of courage and love.